back to the channel, everyone. We are going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers for a weird reason, mainly because I was writing out a script out for my next couple videos, which should be coming out in the next week or so, potentially in the next couple days. I just don't know if I'll be able to get to them in time. But it's the, geez, my hair is a mess, so feel free to roast me in the comments for that one. But I was doing research and more or less making my predictions for the AFC seedings and how I think not how the playoffs will go, that's a different video, but basically who I think will make the playoffs in what order. The AFC was a little bit easier than I expected, and the NFC was actually pretty difficult for one team that I just really struggled to kind of place. Where do they land in the NFC? And that was the Green Bay Packers. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, hey, maybe I should do a Green Bay Packers video basically explaining why I would be a little bit concerned about the Packers moving into this next season and why I also have faith in them moving forward. And potentially this could be a team that could actually make a run and be one of the more physical Packer teams that we've seen in a long time. I really do think that this team could be carried by its defense. And when was the last time you remember that about a Green Bay Packers team? And everything is telling me to go with the Vikings as the divisional winner for the NFC North. Honestly, we have the Lions. That is a very interesting team. A lot of people are giving them a little bit of a playoff hype. I don't really understand that, or I wouldn't give that to them yet. They're going to improve, or at least I would hope so. And I think Jared Goff has all the capabilities to potentially get them into a wild card, but I wouldn't expect 3 teams from the NFC North to make the playoffs. I'd maybe expect 2, and we won't even talk about the Bears. And they reminded me because there was a couple teams that were like the Packers I struggled to potentially rank or put into the playoff picture. That would be the Dolphins and the Cardinals. And those two I might make a video on separately. I think I've already made a Dolphins video before. And I slightly made a Cardinals video when I said that Kyler Murray most likely will get traded after this year. But with the Green Bay Packers, what's so interesting about this team is last year they dealt with a ton of injuries, and so that's why we started to believe that they could easily be a big-time contender. And then they lose to the 49ers at home in the perfect weather built for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers does not play well. They lose Davante Adams in the offseason. Things like that make it look like, well, they significantly got worse, right? You assume you lose the best wide receiver in football, you got significantly worse. And I completely understand that. They also have a dynamic tandem in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who could be potentially the best power back in the NFL. Not the best overall back. I want to make that clear. Just because you're the best of the best at one trait does not make you an overall great back. That's what makes Derrick Henry so good. He's probably 2 or potentially 1. I wouldn't be mad at it. But Derrick Henry is so good at other things that makes him the best back, and he has the production behind it. But when you look at A.J. Dillon, that man you're not tackling that man by yourself, by no means. And obviously the biggest concern with the Packers is their offensive weapons. It was the same concern I had with the Bills, where I don't really believe they had a good wide receiver too, and they kind of reminded me of last year's Packers, where they had one really elite wide receiver, a solid but not great tight end, and not a significantly great wide receiver too. You don't need a superstar, you don't need an all-pro guy, but you need someone that you can rely on and trust. And it's a little interesting because you have Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, who I think is a physical freak of nature. But when you watch his film, he does have some things that he has to work out technically. His routes weren't super clean, but then again, he has all the physical traits that you could ask for out of a wide receiver 1. His rookie year is really going to be dependent on how much they're going to rely on him moving forward, because what was weird about the Packers offense, yes, they had a lot more running in the ball, and I think that there's going to be a lot more running in general with this team, but there was a lot of times when you send out Davante Adams out wide and he was on an island, and basically they were going to ask him, hey, you go break off this corner and you're going to get open and Rodgers is going to find you. There's so many times when that was their third and short. That was, hey, we're going to put Davante Adams, you go get open, and Rodgers was going to find him, because they were just that much of a dynamic duo, which makes it very interesting that he went to go to play with Derek Carr, his former college teammate. It'll be very curious to see if they have the same dynamic that Aaron Rodgers had. I think that Aaron Rodgers is really built to be a good quarterback if he trusts the wide receivers that are on his team. He does not have MVS now. He does have Allen Lazard, and it was, what was it, Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is on the roster now. That was seen as their big-time wide receiver pickup other than Christian Watson. And I think that was a good, but there's not a lot of upside with Sammy Watkins. I think they got him on a relatively cheap contract, and I think that he could work out pretty well in this offense. But I do think that their offensive line is always pretty solid, no matter what injuries they deal with. They seem to always have the offensive line intact and really playing very solidly. After losing probably the best center in all of football about last offseason, they still were a really solid group overall. So I think I have really good faith with the offensive line. I love their running back tandem, and their wide receiver room could be much improved if someone gets on the market, or potentially they make a move for a Julio Jones, who I don't think is as washed as people have been saying on the internet. But this is where I think the strength of the Packers, and when you look at that offense, you kind of see it and you're like, well, it is a weaker NFC. The NFC is not very much as strong as it was in previous years compared to the AFC, which is a juggernaut and a bloodbath in and of itself. So you kind of assume, well, the Packers are going to maybe squeak into the playoffs. And I don't think it'll be because of Aaron Rodgers. Though he is the two-time reigning MVP, I think he's going to have to be more efficient, and he's not going to have to force himself to do too much. That was the problem before Matt LaFleur came in, was Aaron Rodgers was tending to do too much. He was trying to do too much for the offense and try to carry too much on his shoulders. And I think Matt LaFleur this year is going to really prove that it doesn't need to be all on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders, because they have been building up a dominant defense. I think this team, they re-signed Jair Alexander, one of the best corners, potentially right up there with Jalen Ramsey. I wouldn't put him above Jalen because Jalen is in a tier of himself, but Jair is no slouch in of itself. I think he's a dominant corner at the line of scrimmage, and he's one of the best corners when healthy. And obviously, a lot of this depends on health. If this team is healthy, I think they can make the playoffs and potentially even win the NFC North once again. But everything is pointing towards the Vikings winning that, because they have a way more dominant offense. I think they're going to rebound defensively a little bit more. But here's the thing. This Packers defense, with the injuries, was potentially the best defense in all of football. And I think, really, with the draft picks that they made, they only got better. And I think, yes, you could definitely make an argument that there's better defensive teams throughout the entire NFL. But I think they are really going to all in on this defense. And I like that. And obviously, you want to worry about the special teams when it comes to a Packers team, apparently, because they can't even punt the ball, and that costs them a playoff game. That's what's crazy about it. It's little things like that can completely defer your entire season, and then you get called Aaron Rodgers the entire offseason, potentially retire. You lose your number one wide receiver. So all these negative things have happened to the Packers. And you kind of boil that up and you're like, man, do they make the playoffs, or do they convincingly make the playoffs? Because there's a difference. There's the Eagles making the playoffs last year, and then you have the Bucs, who dominated and had to go against a Matt Stafford team when it took a 21-point comeback in the last, like, what was it, like a quarter or 5 minutes? Things like that. There's a difference between casually getting into the playoffs and comfortably being there versus just squeaking in, especially if you have a negative record or you're second place in your own division and you really struggle throughout the year. I think that this Packers team is very weird to rank. I've gone back and forth. There's really fair reason on both sides of the ball to really say this team could dominate the line of scrimmage and potentially be one of the more physical teams, because that's been the biggest problem with the Packers over the past couple of years, is teams like the 49ers, who are very physical at the line of scrimmage. We saw it with Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel get that 4th and 7 or 3rd and 7 easily because they were just that dominant at the line of scrimmage. I think that this is what the Packers are trying to be. They're trying to be more dominant and physical. You see it with A.J. Dillon. You see it with their front seven. You see it with some of the safety pickups that they've had. They want to be more physical, and I think that's what's going to make this team different than previous years. Now, will I say they're a Super Bowl favorite like I thought they were last year? No. I don't think that they're even close to a Super Bowl contender. They do not have the weapons to get there. But potentially, could they actually win a couple playoff games and maybe get to an NFC championship? I wouldn't be too surprised by it, but I don't know if they have the weapons to really be a contender. And I wouldn't even put them in a pretender. I don't know where to put them. And if you're a Packers fan, let me know how you feel about your squad, because I do love your defense a ton. I am worried about the offense like everyone else is, but I think that it's a little blown out of proportion because I think they have enough weapons to be at least a top 15 offense. I don't know if they're going to fall out of the top 15. That just doesn't seem like Aaron Rodgers' MO. He's got to throw the ball to somebody. I understand losing Devontae Adams, and I think he was promised that Devontae was going to still be on the roster. But, you know, Devontae wants to go play with Derek Carr. He has to realize that this is the reality of his situations. I don't know if he's missing voluntary OTAs. There's just always drama with Aaron Rodgers. And so that's why it's like my faith in predicting for this team wavers. And that sucks because I think this team has a ton of talent. I think I love the defense, man. I love everything that they have with this defense. I believe the corner, Eric Stokes from Georgia, he had a fantastic rookie year. I think he could really develop into a solid corner too. Playing a guy with that level of speed and that level of athleticism against your wide receiver twos is not something that you want to match up against, especially when you have Jair Alexander locking up one half of the field. And then I believe they still have Adrian Amos, who is a viable safety in this league, and he's super fast in and of itself, and he's a hard hitter, I think. I know this video was all over the place, but like, let me know what you think of the Packers. This was not a predictions video. You'll see my predictions for the Packers and where I land. I just thought that it was an interesting conversation piece. I understand that a lot of Bills fans are mad at me right now. My last video, although it got some views, a lot of people, I got into some arguments, man. I will defend my take. I do think the Bills are a good team, but I also do think the Packers are a very interesting team. I don't think they're a middle of the pack team by any matter, but I do think that they're really tough to place in the NFC in the climate of everything going on. Do I think they're better than the Bucs? No, especially if Tom Brady's not playing. Do I think they're better than potentially the Eagles? I understand Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, but they got a really solid roster overall. Let me know what you would put the Packers in, and if you're at this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this summer. I do think that we can do it, and I really do love making videos for you guys. It's something that I really enjoy doing. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and go have a great summer. Don't get too sunburnt. Wear some sunscreen. See ya.